Here we go. I've got to have the sound on for this one. I'm sorry. Chris had taken several pictures. I had asked him to send me one or two that I didn't have, but he shot me some of these. And you remember seeing the IBEC, and this is before we're going to look at anything else, but I really like how he had overlaid these with the verse that goes with it as the heart. So these are the heart. And he got a really good close-up of these guys, where I just had the kind of outer ways. So I was really appreciative of these. I've got to figure out now. Hold tight. Here we go. Okay. And you remember the one that was up above the Spring of Engedi? And I said, okay, now right up there. And I kind of pointed at it. They're in there. You can kind of see them. Well, his camera got it. And so you can kind of see them. They're up in that rock way up above. So it was just a really good picture of the conies, or what was it, Hyvex. So those were nice. I like that one. This is the one. Now you don't get a good view here. Right there is St. George's, the monastery that's in there. I believe I said Greek Orthodox, if I'm not mistaken. But down in here is Valley of the Shadow of Death. And so that was a good, I like this picture, and I'm going to continue to use this as we go through New Testament things, because he's covered it here, but right here is the road. This is the Jericho, Jerusalem road, where the killings would happen. That's where the Samaritan helped the story of the Good Samaritan. So this is the places where this would have happened at. And these we haven't got to yet. As you can tell, there's somebody's hand with those mustard seeds, and the mustard seeds are up here. So we'll be seeing that one later on. Whoops. And he sent me this one. I'd said the date palms, where the dates come from. There's one of your orchards, and those, for whatever reason, thrive down near the Dead Sea, where it's so dry. They're going down and getting water. So I thought that was a neat shot that he'd got in front of me. I had to laugh at this. Again, this has nothing to do with what we're going to be looking at, but I'm going to be pulling in some of these shots that I took to send back to Bethany so she could see things. But I laughed because when I got back, I showed a couple of these pictures to Pete, and Pete starts naming off the foods that I was eating, and I had no idea what the names of them were. And as he would say them, I was remembering. So Pete, as I go through these, you feel free to yell out what these foods are, okay? Because I don't remember everything. This is one of the breakfast buffets. And just keep in mind, I've got maybe 5 different pictures. These are huge. The buffets are huge, but it was worth it. What we had, I mean, that's some kind of an egg stuff over here. I don't know what the potatoes were, but they were okay. Cheesecake and everything, and multiple kinds of cheesecake. I thought I was going to come back 10 pounds heavier, and I guess the walking and the heat did it good for me. But where's I've lost my mouse. There it is. Okay. There's just one section. Here's another section. They like this stuff. It's like little quiche things with carrot stuff in it, and they serve it cold. And I thought it was kind of disgusting, but this one was warm. It was better, but this one was good. This was like I've lost my mouse again. This was a fried egg, like over hard, over medium, whatever, and some kind of a tomato sauce, oniony stuff. It wasn't bad. And then just the scrambled and whatever. Then this, I don't know who she is, but she did look at me funny because I was taking pictures though. They had these pastries everywhere, and it had like a sweet cheese stuff in the middle, chocolate, what do you call those things? Croissants, and then more of these cheese sweet things up here. If you wanted sweets, you had your full of it. This was one of my favorite areas. I love this bread. I never did it. Don't judge me, but my flesh wanted so bad to take a couple of these little loaves and shove them in my pocket and take them on the trip when we would go between breakfast and supper. But these, they would have one of the big ones down here, and so you'd shave off one piece of a big one. And I'll show you what we would put on it in a minute. Some people would get these. I don't know why they got prepackaged. Okay, this bothered me. People would pay, these were like 30, 40, 50, whatever. These were high-end meals. And people would bring kids to these expensive meals. And the kids, rather than getting this good stuff, they would go to where they had sweet cereals, just cereal. And that's all they would eat is, I can't handle paying for something like that. This is where they would have some of your dates, your figs, the fresh fruits and stuff up in here. But this, bad picture, I'm sorry. This is what we have as the pickled herring. Like I said, Dutch pickled herring. Then they had an Israeli pickled herring, which was a red fish. It was disgusting. The Dutch one was good if you like pickled herring. But so that was good. Anybody's welcome to tell me what some of this is, because I was scared of it. I wouldn't try it. It looked like almost yogurt with stuff. And I don't know what the stuff is, but I stayed away from this section. It was almost looked too healthy. This was the cheese at everything, and it was good cheese. I had some. This I really liked. It was more of a like a fresh seeds and oats and apricots and raisins and walnuts, and then I would put all that stuff in a cup and then put either the regular honey or the date honey here on it, and it was to drool over. So that was good stuff. And for whatever reason, they had fresh salad type things at breakfast. I've never had that before. And they would have the olives with the pits in them and the mushrooms and all the good stuff. And ice cream after, not the same. This, when I told you the bread that I would get, where you'd put a dollop of this, a little bit of this, all the way up your bread, and get each one of the different kinds. One of the guys, you'll see him in a little bit, he loved this chocolate spread. And you would just load it up all the way across the bread. So every bite, you got a different jam. And yes, I did that extensively. It was wonderful. Okay, so that's everything that we had done while we were, I know what I forgot to do. That is everything, come on, give me a mouse, that we did while we were in the motel. So Pete, I'm going to ask if you would please, I'm trying really hard with this, but it's not moving.
They must have a lot of chefs that do all that food.
They do. They really do. I'm trying to print and Word is not responding whatsoever. So I'm going to have to go back and forth.
Oh, okay.
It'll be okay. I was trying to print this. Nothing's coming up, but I can move it. So we'll be okay.
Okay.
Okay. What we're going to be looking at tonight is, in my opinion, a bad thing. Russell had asked me if I'd seen the Tuohys lately. I saw them Thursday or Friday. And as I was sitting down, I said something to the effect of, when I get to church Sunday night, I am going to talk about how awful Dan is. And I'm going to talk about all the sin that is in Dan. Well, and then I explained what I was talking about. We're looking at Tel Dan. And so he chuckled, it's okay. But anyways, we're going to look at Tel Dan. I don't think I'll make it to Beth Shean tonight. Beth Shean will be next week. What that is where Beth Shean, as you look in the Old Testament, that's where Saul and Jonathan were hung on the city gate as an example. And the men of Jabesh Gilead went over and took them off the wall and went and gave them a proper burial. And right now there's this huge Roman city that's been excavated. It's just gorgeous. It's really good what they have there. But I don't think we'll make it there tonight. Tonight we're going to start with and probably end with Tel Dan. Now I'm going to mention, I'll try to not mention it again, but Tel, whenever you see that word, it's like it is a hill, but usually it's a man-made hill. And what that hill is, and they believe that the one that we're going to be seeing is about 20 layers thick. And what it is build a town, destroy it, build on top of it, destroy it, build on top of it, and it's happened 20 times. And so as you get up to the top of this place, I'm describing 20. I've got Beth Shean in my mind. I'm sorry. Tel Dan is a tell as well. It's been built on as well, but the 20 one is at Beth Shean. So I apologize for that. So let's back up. Dan, tell me anything you know about Dan. You can go basic. Huh?
Samson was from Dan.
Okay, I believe so. So, okay, so let's go a little bit further back to what you just said. It's one of the tribes. So it's he's one of the 12 sons. And this is going to be important later on. Who is his, who is the full brother of Dan? I don't think so. Double check that.
Is it Naphtali?
I think it's Naphtali. I think so. But that's his full brother. The reason that's important, and we'll see that in just a moment, is as you look at the map that we're going to see in a minute, where Dan goes up to found his city, it's in his brother's area. So what, maybe whether that's why he went up there, I'm not sure, but it's in that same area that he went. So he is it's one of the 12 tribes. So we know that about it. So he was given a portion in the promised land, right? What happened? What did the tribe of Dan do about their portion? I'm trying to be general. Does anyone remember?
They want the ones that trick you.
No, not them. Tricking the people and then slaying them. That was not Dan. I'd have to look that up. Okay, let me just tell you then. Dan, when they gave them a portion. Let me see if I can just show you this map. For some reason, it doesn't pull up. There we go. Dan got this portion here, right near Judah. So it was near the southern part. And Dan came back and said, look, Joshua, these Philistines, they're just too much for us. We can't handle this. You need to give us another area. We're not able to clean them out. And so what Joshua said was, okay, you can't handle your people here. You just go somewhere else. You go wherever. You go get your own land. You go up to the mountains and you do your thing. But I've given you a portion. You've got your land. That's where the story we're going to hear today comes from. They bellyached, and I'm going to throw some words in here. They were lazy. They were disobedient. They didn't do what they were told. They didn't do it how they were told to do it. And they had to go, there's Dan up here. They had to go get another section of land because they would not do what God had told them to do. So this is a bad mark on them already. So they went up to what it became Dan, it was Laish. And we'll be looking at that. Be turning in your Bibles to Joshua 18. Joshua 18. We'll look at some of the pictures in just a minute. And when I start going through the pictures, if any of you kids are wanting to come up and look closer, you're welcome if your parents say it's okay. So Joshua chapter 18. I'm sorry, I said Joshua. I apologize. Judges. There's a reason that didn't look quite right. Judges chapter 18. Now, let me just give you a little, and you know this account, when the people of Dan are going up, just before they went up, there was a man named Micah. That's in Judges 17. And Micah finds this Levite and he says, you know, I've got my idols and I need a priest. I want you to come be my priest and I'll pay you. And so this man, this Levite goes and he becomes a priest Well, then the tribe of Dan is going up to, they send 5 guys to scout out the territory, and they come up through where Micah is, and they see this guy and they recognize him. And they say, what are you doing here? I'm a priest. And he says, well, why don't you intercede to God for us? And you tell us if this is going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Judges 18, 5 and 6, he says, you know, you go your way, the Lord's before you. They departed, they went and found Laish, and they saw that it was, I think they worded here in verse 6, no, verse 7, they dwelt careless. They were in the middle of nowhere. They weren't worried about stuff. Probably the gates were open all the time. It was just a very laid back area. And so they decide, they bring back the report. Dan says, we're going to go take over this land. And as they're coming back through to go up to where to Laish, to where Dan is going to be, they go by Micah's house, which is where this priest is. And they said, look, here's your choice. You can be here as one, as you know, being a priest to one guy. You can come take care of our whole tribe. You can come be over all of us. It's like, you know, promotion time. So they take Micah's idols and they take his priest. Micah comes in this chapter and says, what do you think you're doing? And they said, I'm going to send some angry men out and they're going to stomp you if you don't turn around and go back. Leave us alone. We've taken your stuff and we're going to go up. And they did. That is exactly what happened. They went up, they wiped out Laish. They burned it, they rebuilt it, and they named it Dan. So that is how this place got started. So if I can get someone to read for me, verse 27 down through verse 31.
I'll read it.
Okay.
And they took the things which Micah had made, and the priests which he had, and came unto Laish, unto a people that were at quiet and secure, and they smote them with the edge of the sword, and burnt the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no business with any man. And it was in the valley that lieth by Beth-rohah. And they built a city and dwelt therein. And they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born unto Israel. Howbeit the name of the city was Laish at first. And the children of Dan set up the graven image, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, he and his sons were priests of the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. And they set them up Micah's graven image, which he made, all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is this, the tribe of Dan, as they're getting started in their new home up here, they're starting off bad. Everything that they're doing is bad. Now, from what you've just seen, why would they go and take over, leave here and go up here? What would have been some of the attitudes or motives they would have had to go attack Laish?
Too hard down here.
Yeah, too hard down here. So let's go where it's easy. Let's go where things are going to be a lot more simple for us. And keep in mind, I was reading this morning, as far as the number of the fighting men, you're going to see how little this town is. And now you've got, let's say, 50,000 people, soldiers coming up to kill you. It wouldn't have been that hard of a fight. And they went up with their whole tribe and they took over this place. And I'm going to again say this was easy pickings for them. They were being lazy. And what the problem was, the biggest thing, what was the biggest bad decision they made as they went up there?
They made their own.
They took idols. They took idols. Keep in mind when this is. God just brought them out of the wanderings. God just delivered them all of this land. God gave it to them. God has been doing miracles, and they are going to go get idols and set idols up while their brothers are down serving God. So they're already starting this idolatrous life at the very beginning. Things are going bad from the get-go. Okay, there's another place we see this city. Do you remember? It's in Genesis 14:19. Abraham pursued Lot as far as Dan. This is where Abraham traveled a couple of 100 miles chasing after the people, the kings who had taken Lot from Sodom and Gomorrah. He went and he got them, and then on the way back, that's where he runs into Melchizedek. This is where all this is happening, and we're going to see a gate that would have been there at Abraham's time. So this was the time period we're looking at. Now here's where the problems come in. A little bit later, after David. So this would have been about 1,000 years before, and then about 200-300 years after is when David and Solomon come on the scene. And Solomon, I said it this morning, he was a failure. Solomon was a total failure. And here's why. Solomon had everything going for him, and then we know his story, right? He's going to start marrying all these hundreds and hundreds of women. He's going to be bringing in their gods. And I believe it was last time we looked and we saw one of the places that he had made an altar to Baal. He made these altars. He really promoted idolatry. Solomon was not a positive influence whatsoever. He made a mess of things. So when he made a mess of things, his son, which was who? Rehoboam, he decided not to be wise. Jeroboam comes, and God gave Jeroboam promises. You follow me, and I'll set you up like I would have David. I'm giving you a blank check. And it was really a good thing. Rehoboam did not follow godly counsel. And as a result, Jeroboam took the 10 northern tribes all up in here, and he split. He split off from Judah, from the tribe of David. This is where Dan becomes very, very important, because this is where Jeroboam said, I'm nervous. And I'm not, the passage is in 1 Kings 11, 12, 13. This is the passage we're thinking of here. Jeroboam is scared that the people are going to go down to worship God and they're going to leave him. He has got a fear of man, and he wants to keep everybody, he wants to keep everything under control. So he sets up two idols, 2 golden calves, one up at Dan, the other at Bethel, I believe. And he sets 2 of them up, but one of them is here. One of these sets up is at Dan. And then, and we'll see a number of things with this, but God sends a prophet and he says, this is what's going to happen to you. You need to, push this aside. You need to get rid of your idols. You need to follow me. And God gives him a very obvious sign. He shakes his fist at the prophet. His hand dries up. The altar that he had made gets split in 2. The ashes come out. God gives him a direct miracle, and he still doesn't respond to God. He still resists God. This is what we're dealing with. And even by name, Josiah is prophesied that Josiah is going to come and destroy this altar. And he destroys, we see him destroy later on in 2 Kings, the altar at Bethel, but we don't see this one destroyed. My guess is this got destroyed as well, but at a minimum, if it didn't, the Assyrians destroyed it in 700. So the Assyrians came in and took over and took away Israel. Okay, there's some history. So now we'll look at a few of these pictures. Now, what Dan is today is a nature preserve. It is known for being the greenest place in Israel. And if you remember some of these, it's desert. Israel is desert. And if you remember, that's what it looks like. You're going to see some things with these pictures that shows you how lush this place is. Now, this is the largest tributary going into the Jordan River. And so Jordan, what's the name inside that name? Dan. Jordan means coming down out of Dan. This is the river that that, what's the word? Feeds, yeah, feeds the Jordan. This is the biggest part of it. And this is just lush in here. It's beautiful. And so they've set it up as a nature preserve. So there's several of these. And this is supposed to have sound with it. There we go. Let's go back. Okay, so there's the river coming through. Yes, it flows. And again, you see the lush, how green it is. It's just beautiful up there. Not that wide, probably like 10 feet. Okay. It comes, it's easier to take a picture instead of trying to take notes. But it comes when Mount Hermon has the snow melt, it goes down into the ground and there's springs that go down through. This is one that comes out and it's constant. So again, it feeds the Jordan. And there are some wading pools you'll see in just a moment. Yes, I took a number of these, so bear with me. I was impressed. This is one of the wading pools. And they just let you wait. I didn't. They let you wait around in there if you want. This guy photobombed me, so I told him I was going to leave the picture in there. This is friend Steve, but this is just a beautiful area that's been set up. Now, keep in mind, if you have a city, if you're going today and you're going to set up an area, what do you need to keep your city safe? You need water source. This is it. You need elevation. They had it. You need water. They have it. The water will give you food. They would have had it. This was a prime place. So it's a good, listen, you can see why they would have wanted it. Now, this area goes back again 3,000 years. This is a huge find. And we're going to see this. It's called the Abraham Gate. And we'll see that in just a few minutes. So these are the two things we're going to look at: ancient Dan and the Abraham Gate. Now, this is the when Dan went up to fight, the passage we just looked at. They went up to Leshem, and they named it after their father Dan. This wall that you see behind that sign is this wall here. This is the outer wall. So I'm trying to get it so you can picture it. This wall comes up this way. Here's the extension of it, and right here, this is where your, I just lost my word, the marketplace, where they would have cobblestones. People would meet there. That's where they would hang out. So they would sell things. And so just keep in mind, this is the front and we're coming around the side. And by the way, these are original rocks, the original gate, a lot of this. So you're going back 3,000 plus years. This is, to me, this is amazing. We've got it this old. So coming around this corner, we have to come around this way, and this is that the marketplace. Now, this is important because I don't know if you knew this or not. Until the 1900s, there was no evidence externally. The name of David, the Davidic kingdom, it didn't exist anywhere. There was no evidence of him existing. And so scoffers would say, well, that's just a Bible story. That's nice, but there's no evidence of him existing. They found it in this area. So right down in here, there was they had found a stone, which I think it's next. No, it's not. It'll come up. A stone that had inscriptions on it, and one of them was the Kingdom of David. And so they do that. It's nice that they have that as a collaboration of scripture. So what we were looking at up front was right here, the outer wall. Then we came around to this outer plaza where people would meet. And now we're going to be coming right here into the gate. That makes sense? Okay. There's the stone. They took it and they put it in a museum in Israel. They didn't leave it there for people to see. But what's highlighted here was where the words for the Kingdom of David or the house of David was.
They were up at the tribe of Dan at the fortress that was found. Some of the gates down in this area. There was inscriptions when they found references to the tribe of David outside of the scriptures. That's the only external reference, and it's just a good, it's a good proof that the scriptures are true. It's not just the scriptures talking of themselves. There is external evidence as well. So on the other side of this, there was another.
So around there was where we started.
Some of this is reconstructed, some of it is original. So this is the area. This area.
Okay, I'm just stopping for just a minute. You're gonna see, I hope in a minute, if I can get it in here, a picture of this section right here. The gate was right behind us. Right there are little places that hold 4 posts and an elevated place where you have a seat for the king. And then down through here was a bench where elders would sit. So as you have people meeting at the gates to do like, and I'll mention it in a minute, but Ruth and Boaz, or he met with the men at the gate. This is exactly what he's talking about and where they would have met. So that's what the gate would look like.
Is going to go up and around this way to see the gates, to see this is the city of refuge. So we'll be able to see exactly what was up there, and I'll try to continue this video there.
And the guy that I just had the picture of, you'll see him again in a minute. He's the one that sent me the pictures that you just looked at the beginning. Okay, this is just, I'm not going to zoom in on this. This is just a depiction of Boaz bringing his claim before the men to get Ruth.
This will continue a little bit further from the gates. You had places within the gates where you have storage, the rooms off of the gates. This would be these. Large rooms, that's where all the judgment.
That's where we started.
Right down in this area where it's passed. There's the gates down in that area. So right here would be a place where judgment would happen, where people would come, be where Ruth came and Boaz came for Ruth and said that they brought the men of the city, they gathered them together. It's just a very small area. They would meet there.
If I can't see this,
And at the top.
okay, I missed it. We will pull it up. I wanted you to see, this is one of the pictures that I got from Chris that I didn't zoom in good enough on it, and he had gotten it for me. So there. So this is where I told you where the seat was. So here you can see the posts, the places where the poles would have gone, and the king would have been sitting up in here, and this is where all the elders would have been sitting. This is what the setup would have been like as they came to get judgment. Okay, so this, what we're looking at now, we've gone up. Remember the picture of the temple of the city. The gate was on the right side, and as you go up and over it, there's another gate to get out. We're on the gate to get out right now, so we're going over.
And this is near the gate. Here will be your entrances of side rooms. Stop after coming in the gate.
That's the picture, Tiger.
And then right here, side rooms, 3,800 years old. This is outside the city gate here. Some pictures of this.
So outside the gate, you'd have had more homes, and that's some of them that they started uncovering, or started that they have uncovered. They won't do more. They stop after a little while. But this is some of the homes and businesses that they would have found outside of this gate, which is right up in here. Okay. As we passed out of that area, this is a very sad part. Obviously, the metal is not an original structure, but they put that in. What do you think that metal represents?
An altar.
There's your altar. This is where they would offer sacrifices. Right down here, and there's a basin and I say a basin, I'm talking, 4 feet across, where they would prep sacrifices, wash off the blood. They get everything ready, cleanse, do everything they needed to with the running water. It was down in this area. Here's where the offering happened, and these stairs coming up here, you'll see it better in a minute. This is the stairs up to your bema seat. This is where the golden calf was. So this is what they found. And this is for me, this is a sad place. But this is, and I'm going to mention it in the video thing. This is the original wall from 3,000 years ago. And it's just, for me, that was amazing to think it was there.
This is at the backside of the city of Dan when Jeroboam decided that he needed to keep the people there and from going down to Jerusalem. What he did was built his own temple, and they would sacrifice to the golden calf. This wall here is original. So this is thousands, 4,000 years old. It's still there.
3,800.
People are standing at the top of the stairs. Let's see if I can do this for you. There we go. Right at the top, where the guy in the red shirt's coming down, there's a stack of rocks. That would have been the top for the bema. They don't allow you to go any further where they're excavating. That is the bema. This is the tabernacle that Jeroboam set up. It reconstructed this altar out of metal. Obviously, it's not the original. But that is where the altar would have been for sacrifice. These walls are reconstructed. You can see the newness of the stones. So those are reconstructed. These right here, you can see these are original. This was the sacrifice area down below, right there is where the cistern was to wash out the sacrifices. So this was the temple. There's the entrance right here.
Okay, so that's Jeroboam's temple. This is back up. Remember I said where the bema seat was. This is the area up in here. So they would come up here to where their God was. This one I put in, nothing to do with Dan. This just gives you an idea of how close everything is up there. This town is one that we were debating a little bit whether you understood it or not right. I don't remember if that was Syrian, Lebanese, or if we had thought it was and it was actually Israeli. But as you go up north, you've got areas off to the sides, and they would say, at this point, we're 30 miles away from the Lebanese border, and you'll see some army bases. And as you get closer, we are 2 miles from the Lebanese border. We are right there is your Lebanese border, and you would see electric fences. You would see signs that said landmines. And I didn't feel unsafe at all. It's not like you had active military, but you could tell these are people that don't like Israel. And it is right, it's that close. And these kind of, it's a reality that they live with. And it's something, as we pray for Israel, we should be praying for their safety because it is that close to them. And it's a reality in their lives. Now, from there, from where that temple was, we came around to the side, and I forgot the guy's last name. His first name was Abraham. Some say they named this Abraham's Gate because of him. It was because of, I think, because of Abraham's time frame, where he came up here in Genesis 14, chasing after Lot. And I'll be saying some of this in the video thing, but you'll notice here this archway. People have said the archway was an origination of Rome. This was here way before Rome existed. So this is what was in this area of Laish, and this was all underground. They found this and put this dome over it so they could, not have this the red brick washing away with rain whenever it did hit. So this is some of the this is the entryway, the gate, and you'll see what their rendition of what it would have looked like as well. This is, so there's the gate you were just looking at. It would have had the walls this way, and then what we were looking at would have been back in here. And the original gate that we started at was over in this area. So they're saying this was what they believe the original fortress at that point would have looked like. And that was this gate here. I'm sorry, I'm moving my mouse. This gate would have been right here, and then the wall would have gone around the city this way. So that's what their theory is with it.
Okay, this is the last gate we're going to be seeing here. This one is 1700 years before the time of Christ. It's also in the Dan area. If you look up in here, you'll see the red brick arch where it was built, where they're excavating it. And the city, there's a picture that I've taken before that'll show what the city did look like. They would have arches going, or arches walls going off of either side of it. So this would have been down. The view from here. We'll just look at that.
Not the best, but it did zoom in some of these pretty ones. And as I said, it's a lush area. And that these types of flowers, they were everywhere, just to show again how lush it was.
What did you say the temperature was at?
I was usually around 100 to 110. It was dry. Yeah, it was a dry heat. It'll burn your nose up, which I've experienced, but it was not as, you felt it after a little while. Where I really felt it was the Dead Sea, because I was doing stuff and I would go into I went into like their sauna type area and didn't realize how much it was draining me. And when I stood up to get out of it, I was dizzy, and it took me a little while to recoup, but it was good. It was good. But yet this gives you an idea of what Jeroboam did and how he really messed things up, in my opinion. Now, I have 4 different points here of things we can learn from this. Do you see any application points that we can learn from this account that we've looked at Tel Dan? If you can't, I'll give you mine. We'll be good. And some I've already mentioned, I know. We'll start with Jeroboam. Jeroboam, he started out bad, and then he had God come. God sent a prophet. The prophet came. God gave grace to Jeroboam. He said, look, if you don't stop this, I'm going to wipe you out. I'm going to have to punish. I'm going to have to punish you. You're going to lose your kingdom. Everything's going to go bad. And God gave grace by showing him this. God had given him grace to allow him to be king of this, the big part. He gave him a promise to establish his kingdom if he would be obedient. Then after he's disobedient, okay, you got time to repent. And with all this grace upon grace upon grace, Jeroboam turns and he goes after his flesh. He does his own thing. You and I have been given grace upon grace upon grace. And yet it's easy, for me, it's easy to look at Jeroboam and say, guy, you're crazy. You had God working so direct in your life and you still turn to and after your flesh. And what do? We have God working so direct in our lives and showing grace upon grace upon grace. God has sent his own son in our time period so that we have the fulfillment of all this that they're just looking forward to. And yet we still want to serve our flesh and we still want to do things our way. And it's so easy for me to look and rightfully so to say Jeroboam was wrong. But we have we have better benefits and we still turn on God and go after our flesh. And that's a good challenge for me to look back at how gracious God has been and to have that desire. God, give me the desire, follow you, to remember what you've done. You also see, if you think of something, please stop me because I'd rather hear from you than me. As you look at Jeroboam, one of his key things that was a problem for him is he had a fear of man. He was scared. These people aren't going to like me anymore. They'll go down and they'll turn on me and I'll be by myself and I won't be able to lead anymore. And he had this, he sinned to get his success. He allowed something else to take the place of worship in his life. And it definitely affected other people around him. The whole kingdom was affected by him because he had that fear of man. We need to be careful of that. I need to be more concerned with what God thinks than what everybody else around me thinks. I need to be more concerned with following my Lord and not that's a good way to describe an idol in your life. It's something that you're willing to sin to get, sin to keep, sin if you can't get it. We are willing to sin over this issue or whatever it is in your life. Jeroboam did this. He had this fear of man and he was willing to sin to keep his kingdom. Something we got to be careful with. And it really is easy when you look, we talked about Solomon. He started off so strong. And it is so easy to start off strong and get lax and just coast for a while. We are in a fight. We're not in a stroll, and we need sometimes I'll watch a video clip, forgive me for this, but on YouTube, I'll see these little clips and all of a sudden a boxing match will come up and you'll see a guy that just starts getting pummeled and he'll put his guard up and he'll take a shot whenever he can. He'll try to keep swinging. He'll try to not go down. It's a good picture of the Christian life. We need to keep swinging. We need to stay in the fight, not get lax, not quit like Solomon did. Solomon took the easy way out. We are in a fight, and we need to remember that. Last one I had, and I'll take anything from you. Have you ever heard somebody say something like this? If God would just come down and tell me this, what to do, I would follow him. I would obey him. Why didn't God write it in the clouds? If God would just tell me, I would obey. I don't believe it. Here you had this man who had direct revelation from God, Jeroboam. God comes down and he says, if you don't repent, I'm going to take it away from you. He yells at him. His hand dries up. The guy just told him, if you don't do what I say, this altar is going to split. The ashes are going to come out. And it happened immediate. He had God talk to him through this prophet. He saw a miracle. Didn't make any difference. He kept going his own selfish way. We have everything we need right here. And if we're not going to accept the word of God and follow Jesus and what he's given us, even if an angel came down from heaven to give us a message, that's not what is going to sway somebody. We need to choose to, acknowledge God is true. I need to follow him. And that's what we didn't have in the account that we looked at. They wanted to follow their own selves and their own flesh. It's a very negative example. Kind of ironic that it's in such a gorgeous area. Anything else? That's what I've got for tonight. It was starting to sink in at this time that 3,800 years old. And I'm walking around it. I'm touching these stones that were here at the time of Jeroboam. And it was awesome. I will say this, you're going to hear this a lot more. I would recommend this highly, to the point that if anyone in here, let's say 2-3 years down the road, would say, I want to do this, I would underwrite you to go. It is beneficial for you to see this come to life and to see it, real time. It's worth it. You're going to see more as we go forward. This is all Old Testament right now. Next week, more Old Testament, maybe the next, but then we're starting to get into Galilee, and we're going to start seeing where Jesus walked and what he did. And it gets better. This is good. And it's already good, but it gets better. So anyone else? Okay, well, we are going to close in a word of prayer, and then we'll be dismissed.